As I lay in that sterile hospital bed, the smell of antiseptic clinging to the air, I felt a strange mix of vulnerability and hope. The surgery had left me physically weakened, but I believed my wife would be my rock during this time. Little did I know, the very foundation of my trust was about to crumble. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, casting a harsh glow on the white sheets that covered my frail body. I could hear the distant beeping of machines, a constant reminder of my fragility. The days blended into one another, each marked by the dull ache in my body and the warmth of her presence. Sarah had always been my anchor, the one who kept me grounded. I remembered our wedding day, the way she looked in that flowing white dress, her laughter echoing in my ears like a sweet melody. But as the days passed in the hospital, I sensed a shift, a distance in her gaze, a hesitance in her touch. It was a feeling I couldn't quite place, like a shadow lurking just beyond my reach. I had expected her to be by my side, holding my hand as I navigated the pain of recovery. Instead, there were moments when I caught her staring out the window, her expression distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to the stress of my surgery and the burden of caring for me. After all, I was the one who had undergone a major operation. Surely, she was just overwhelmed. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice the little things, the way she would check her phone more often, the late-night phone calls that seemed to stretch on longer than necessary. I tried to dismiss my growing unease, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. I was the one who was vulnerable, after all. I needed her support, her love, and I was determined to believe that she was still the devoted wife I had married. One evening, as I lay in bed, the pain medication coursing through my veins, I heard her laughter echoing from the living room. It was a sound I had always cherished, but that night, it felt different, tinged with a lightness that seemed foreign. I strained to listen, my heart racing as I tried to decipher the conversation. It was a voice I didn't recognize, a man's voice, and it sent a chill down my spine. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just being overly sensitive. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. The following day, I was finally discharged from the hospital. As I stepped into the familiar confines of our home, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The walls that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with uncertainty. I wanted to believe that everything would return to normal, that Sarah would be there to help me heal, both physically and emotionally. But the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach refused to dissipate. I tried to engage her in conversation, to draw her out of the shadows that seemed to envelop her. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice hoarse from disuse. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Busy, you know how it is," she replied, her tone light but her gaze drifting away. I felt a pang of frustration. I wanted her to open up, to share her thoughts and feelings with me, but it was as if there was a wall between us, one that I couldn't breach. As the days turned into a blur of recovery and uncertainty, I found myself grappling with my vulnerability. I had always prided myself on being strong, the protector of our little world. But now, I was the one in need of protection, and the very person I had relied on was slipping away. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunting the spaces we had once filled with laughter and love. In the quiet moments, when the house was still and the shadows danced along the walls, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but the thought of facing the truth terrified me. What if my fears were unfounded? What if I was just a wounded man projecting his insecurities onto the one person I loved most? But as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Little did I know, the revelation that awaited me would shatter the fragile threads of trust that held our marriage together, plunging me into a darkness I had never anticipated. The day began like any other, the sun filtering through the curtains, casting soft patterns on the floor. I had spent the morning trying to regain some semblance of normalcy, focusing on my recovery and the mundane tasks that had once felt so trivial. Sarah had gone out for groceries, leaving me alone in the house, a quiet stillness enveloping me. I tried to distract myself with television, but the flickering images on the screen felt hollow, a poor substitute for the warmth of her presence. As the hours dragged on, I found myself wandering through the house, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't quite articulate. I stopped in front of our bedroom door, the place where we had shared so many intimate moments, laughter, and dreams. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Something compelled me to enter, a whisper of intuition that urged me to look deeper into the shadows of our life together. I pushed the door open, the familiar scent of our shared space washing over me. The bed was unmade, a testament to my recent absence, and the sunlight streamed in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My gaze fell on her nightstand, where her phone lay, face up and buzzing with notifications. A surge of curiosity mixed with dread coursed through me. I knew I shouldn't, but the urge to uncover the truth was overwhelming. I picked up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The screen lit up, revealing a series of messages that sent my world spiraling into chaos. There were texts filled with affection, emojis that felt like daggers to my heart, and a name I didn't recognize, Jake. My breath caught in my throat as I read the words, each one a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound I had endured. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one message read, followed by another, "You make me feel alive again." The realization hit me like a freight train, the weight of it crashing down on my chest. I staggered back, the phone slipping from my fingers and landing on the carpet with a soft thud. My mind raced, grappling with disbelief and a growing sense of rage. How could she do this to me? I was supposed to be healing, not grappling with the reality of her betrayal. The very foundation of our life together felt like it was crumbling beneath me. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I tried to process the whirlwind of emotions. Anger surged through me, hot and consuming, mingling with a profound sense of loss. I had trusted her implicitly, believed in the vows we had exchanged, and now, it felt like those promises had been reduced to ashes. The tears I had held back for so long began to spill over, each drop a testament to the pain that threatened to engulf me. Just then, I heard the front door open, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the hallway. Panic gripped me, and I quickly wiped my eyes, trying to compose myself. I couldn't let her see the devastation that had taken root in my heart. I needed to confront her, to demand answers, but the thought of facing her felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into the unknown. "Hey, I'm back," Sarah called out, her voice bright and cheerful. I forced a smile, my heart racing as I tried to mask the turmoil brewing inside me. She entered the room, her arms laden with grocery bags, and for a moment, I was struck by how normal she looked. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, stood before me, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break. "Need help?" she asked, glancing at the bags. I shook my head, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, I'm fine." The words felt like a lie, a fragile facade that threatened to shatter at any moment. I watched as she unpacked the groceries, her movements fluid and graceful, and I felt a pang of longing mixed with betrayal. How could she act so normal when everything had changed? As she turned to face me, I knew the moment had come. I had to confront her, to lay bare the truth that had clawed its way into my heart. "Sarah," I began, my voice trembling, "we need to talk." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations and the weight of my shattered trust. Her expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. "I found your phone," I said, my voice steadying as I met her gaze. I saw the messages. The color drained from her face, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The reality of my words hung between us, a chasm that threatened to swallow us whole. I watched as her expression morphed from surprise to guilt, and then to something else, defiance. "You shouldn't have gone through my phone," she said, her voice sharp, as if trying to deflect the weight of my accusation. "Shouldn't have?" I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. "You're cheating on me, Sarah. How can you even say that?" The anger surged within me, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to drown us both. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the depth of my hurt, but all I saw was her fear, her guilt, and a flicker of something else, defiance. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she stammered, her voice trembling. "It was a mistake." The words felt like a slap in the face, a feeble attempt to justify the betrayal that had shattered my world. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand the pain she had caused, but instead, I felt a cold numbness settle over me. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I watched as she hesitated, her eyes darting away, and in that moment, I knew the answer. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow, and as I stood there, the weight of her betrayal pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. "I don't know," she finally admitted, her voice breaking. I was confused. I thought I could find something I was missing. The admission felt like a dagger to my heart, twisting deeper with each word. I had given her everything, and yet, it hadn't been enough. As the reality of our situation settled in, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was no longer the vulnerable man recovering from surgery, I was a husband betrayed, a man on the brink of a reckoning. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, I would not let this betrayal go unanswered. The silence that followed my question felt like a chasm, an abyss that threatened to swallow us both whole. I stood there, my heart racing, the weight of her admission hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. But it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and betrayal that coursed through my veins. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice rising, the hurt spilling over into rage. "After everything we've been through, how could you betray me like this?" I wanted her to feel the depth of my pain, to understand the magnitude of her actions. I had trusted her with my heart, my life, and now it felt like she had taken a knife and plunged it deep into my chest. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she cried, her voice breaking. "It was just a moment of weakness. I thought I could find something I was missing." Her words felt like a feeble excuse, a flimsy shield against the reality of her betrayal. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood the gravity of what she had done, but instead, I felt a cold numbness settle over me. "Something you were missing?" I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. "What about me? What about us? I was in the hospital, Sarah. I was vulnerable, and you chose to betray me instead of being there for me." The anger surged within me, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to drown us both. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the depth of my hurt, but all I saw was her fear, her guilt, and a flicker of something else, defiance. "I thought you were going to be okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings." The words felt like a slap in the face, a feeble attempt to justify the betrayal that had shattered my world. I had given her everything, and yet, it hadn't been enough. "Burden me?" I spat, my voice laced with bitterness. "You think cheating on me is better than talking to me? You think that's how you handle your feelings?" I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the anger boiling over as I struggled to contain the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I wanted to shake her, to make her understand the pain she had caused, but instead, I felt a cold numbness settle over me. "I was lonely," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You were gone, and I felt abandoned. I thought I could find comfort in someone else." The admission felt like a dagger to my heart, twisting deeper with each word. I had given her everything, and yet, it hadn't been enough. "You were supposed to be my partner, my support," I said, my voice cracking. "Instead, you chose to run to someone else." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." But her words felt hollow, a fragile glass ornament shattering under pressure. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the depth of my hurt, but all I saw was her fear, her guilt, and a flicker of something else, defiance. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah," I said, my voice low and steady. "You've shattered everything we built together. How can I ever trust you again?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I watched as she hesitated, her eyes darting away, and in that moment, I knew the answer. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow, and as I stood there, the weight of her betrayal pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. "I don't know," she finally admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to fix this." The admission felt like a dagger to my heart, twisting deeper with each word. I had given her everything, and yet, it hadn't been enough. I felt a surge of anger, a desperate need to lash out, to make her feel the same helplessness I had experienced. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me," I said, my voice cold and detached. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the realization of what she had lost, but it didn't matter. I was done being the victim in this twisted game. I wanted her to feel the pain I had endured, to understand the consequences of her choices. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. I was confused, lost. I thought I could find something I was missing. The words felt like a feeble excuse, a flimsy shield against the reality of her betrayal. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood the gravity of what she had done, but instead, I felt a cold numbness settle over me. "Confused?" I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. "You think that's an excuse? You think that justifies what you did?" I could feel the anger boiling over, the hurt spilling out in a torrent of emotion. I wanted her to understand the depth of my pain, to feel the weight of her actions, but all I saw was her fear, her guilt, and a flicker of something else, defiance. "I don't know what to say," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." But the words felt empty, a hollow echo of the love we had once shared. I wanted to believe her, to trust her again, but the betrayal had cut too deep. The trust that had once bound us together was now a fragile thread, ready to snap at any moment. As I stood there, the reality of our situation settled in. I was no longer the vulnerable man recovering from surgery. I was a husband betrayed, a man on the brink of a reckoning. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I would not let this betrayal go unanswered. I would make her feel the same helplessness I had experienced, and in doing so, I would reclaim my power. In the days that followed the confrontation, a cold resolve settled over me. The initial shock of Sarah's betrayal had morphed into a steely determination. I was no longer the wounded husband seeking solace. I was a man on a mission, a man who had tasted the bitter fruit of betrayal and was now intent on making her feel the same helplessness I had endured. The emotional turmoil that had once threatened to consume me was now channeled into a singular focus: revenge. I spent hours alone in the house, the silence amplifying my thoughts. I replayed our conversations in my mind, dissecting every word, every glance. I had been vulnerable, trusting, and she had taken advantage of that. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions, to feel the weight of the pain she had inflicted upon me. But how? How could I make her see the destruction she had wrought? The idea began to take shape slowly, like a dark cloud gathering on the horizon. I would not confront her directly, that would be too easy, too predictable. Instead, I would orchestrate a series of events that mirrored her betrayal, a twisted reflection of the pain she had caused me. I wanted her to feel the same sense of loss, the same confusion, and ultimately, the same despair. I started by reaching out to a few acquaintances, people I had met through Sarah over the years. I had always been the one to keep my distance, to maintain a sense of decorum, but now I needed to play the part of the charming husband who had suddenly found himself in a world of chaos. I crafted a narrative, one that painted me as the victim of a cruel twist of fate, a man betrayed by the one person he had trusted most. "Hey, it's been a while," I said to Mark, a friend of ours who had always been a bit too friendly with Sarah. "I could really use a drink. Things have been rough lately." I could hear the concern in his voice as he agreed to meet me at our usual bar. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. This was the first step in my plan. As I sat at the bar, nursing a drink, I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I was about to embark on a path that would change everything. I had always prided myself on being the good guy, the one who played by the rules. But now, I was ready to embrace the darkness that had taken root in my heart. I wanted Sarah to feel the same sense of betrayal, the same confusion that had engulfed me. Over the next few weeks, I carefully crafted my interactions with Mark and a few others. I let slip stories of my newfound freedom, of how I was learning to navigate life without Sarah. I painted a picture of a man who had been wronged but was now reclaiming his life. I could see the intrigue in their eyes, the curiosity about my situation. It was intoxicating, and I reveled in the attention. But I didn't stop there. I began to flirt with the idea of dating again, not because I wanted to move on, but because I wanted Sarah to see me as someone who could easily replace her. I signed up for a dating app, crafting a profile that showcased my best qualities, humor, charm, and a hint of vulnerability. I wanted to attract attention, to draw in women who would be interested in me, and I wanted Sarah to know about it. I made sure to leave my phone out in plain sight, notifications buzzing with messages from potential matches. I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes as she glanced at my phone, the realization that I was moving on without her. It was a small victory, but it fueled my resolve. I wanted her to feel the sting of jealousy, to understand that she had lost something valuable. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to weave my web of deception. I would go out with friends, laughing and enjoying life, while Sarah remained at home, her guilt palpable in the air. I could see the toll it was taking on her, the way she would watch me with a mixture of longing and regret. It was a twisted game, but in my mind, it was justice. I also began to drop hints about my new life to Sarah. I would casually mention my outings, the people I was meeting, and the fun I was having. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that she had pushed me into this world of uncertainty. I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes, the realization that she had lost control of the narrative. But as I plotted my revenge, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was losing a part of myself in the process. The man who had once been filled with love and trust was now consumed by anger and resentment. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, a shadow of the husband I had once been. The darkness was intoxicating, but it was also isolating. I found myself reflecting on our past, the moments that had defined our relationship. I remembered the laughter, the shared dreams, and the love that had once bound us together. But those memories felt tainted now, overshadowed by the betrayal that had shattered my world. I was caught in a cycle of pain, and I wondered if revenge would truly bring me the closure I sought. Yet, the desire for retribution burned brightly within me. I was determined to see my plan through, to make Sarah feel the same helplessness I had experienced. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her choices, to feel the weight of her actions. And as I continued to weave my web of deception, I knew that the final act of my revenge was yet to come. The night of reckoning arrived, cloaked in a veil of anticipation and dread. I had meticulously planned every detail, each step designed to mirror the betrayal Sarah had inflicted upon me. The air was thick with tension as I prepared for the evening ahead, a twisted sense of satisfaction coursing through my veins. I was ready to execute my plan, to make her feel the same helplessness I had endured. I had arranged to meet Mark and a few others at a bar downtown, a place that had once been our favorite haunt. I could already envision Sarah's reaction when she learned I was out with friends, laughing and enjoying life without her. It was a small victory, but it was a crucial part of my plan. I wanted her to see that I was moving on, that I could find happiness without her. As I arrived at the bar, the familiar sounds of laughter and clinking glasses enveloped me. I spotted Mark at a table, his face lighting up as he saw me approach. "Hey, man. Glad you could make it," he exclaimed, clapping me on the back. I forced a smile, the excitement of the evening mingling with the weight of my intentions. We settled into our seats, and as the drinks flowed, I let the conversation drift toward my new life. I spoke of the women I had met on the dating app, the connections I was forging, and the freedom I was experiencing. I could see the intrigue in Mark's eyes, the curiosity about my situation. It was intoxicating, and I reveled in the attention. "Man, you're living the dream," Mark said, raising his glass in a toast. "Here's to new beginnings." I clinked my glass against his, the sound ringing in my ears like a victory bell. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. I knew that Sarah would soon find out about my night out, and I was ready for the fallout. As the night wore on, I received a text from Sarah. "How's your night going?" it read, innocently enough. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I crafted my response. "Great. Just out with Mark and some friends. You should see the girls here," I typed, a smirk creeping onto my face. I hit send, the message a dagger aimed straight at her heart. I watched as the dots appeared, indicating she was typing a response. My heart raced with anticipation. "Have fun," she replied, but I could sense the underlying tension in her words. I knew she was struggling with the reality of my newfound freedom, and it fueled my resolve. The evening continued, laughter and camaraderie filling the air, but my mind was focused on the impending confrontation. I had arranged for Sarah to meet me at the bar later that night, under the guise of wanting to talk. I wanted her to see me in my element, surrounded by friends, enjoying life without her. It was a calculated move, one that would drive home the point of her betrayal. When Sarah arrived, I could see the tension etched on her face. She walked in, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. I was surrounded by friends, laughter echoing around us, and for a moment, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I was the center of attention, the man who had reclaimed his life. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile as she approached. "I didn't know you were out with everyone." Her voice was tight, and I could see the flicker of jealousy in her eyes. "Yeah, just catching up," I replied casually, gesturing for her to join us. "Mark was just telling me about his latest adventure." I could feel the tension in the air as I spoke, the weight of my intentions hanging over us like a dark cloud. As the night progressed, I made sure to include Sarah in the conversation, but I also let my flirtation with the other women linger just enough for her to notice. I laughed a little too loudly, leaned in a little too close, and watched as her expression shifted from curiosity to discomfort. It was a twisted game, but in my mind, it was justice. "Are you seeing anyone?" one of the women asked, her eyes sparkling with interest. I could feel Sarah's gaze on me, the tension palpable as I replied, "Just exploring my options." The words hung in the air, a taunt that cut deep. I could see the hurt in Sarah's eyes, the realization that she had lost something valuable. As the night wore on, I could feel the weight of my actions pressing down on me. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, a shadow of the husband I had once been. The darkness was intoxicating, but it was also isolating. I wanted to make Sarah feel the pain I had endured, but at what cost? Finally, as the evening drew to a close, I knew it was time to confront her. I led her outside, the cool night air wrapping around us like a shroud. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She nodded, her expression a mix of apprehension and defiance. "Is this about what happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that she was about to face the consequences of her actions. "It's about everything," I replied, my heart racing. "About trust, about betrayal, and about what we've lost." As we stood there, the weight of our shared history pressing down on us, I felt a surge of emotion. I wanted her to understand the depth of my pain, to feel the weight of her actions. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that revenge had not brought me the closure I sought. Instead, it had left me feeling more hollow than before. "Do you even care?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Do you understand what you've done to us?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I watched as she hesitated, her eyes darting away, and in that moment, I knew the answer. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow, and as I stood there, the weight of my actions pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you." But her words felt empty, a hollow echo of the love we had once shared. I wanted to believe her, to trust her again, but the betrayal had cut too deep. As I stood there, the reality of our situation settled in. I was no longer the vulnerable man recovering from surgery. I was a husband betrayed, a man on the brink of a reckoning. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I had made my point. But at what cost? The night air was thick with tension as I stood before Sarah, the weight of our shared history pressing down on us like a heavy fog. I had orchestrated my revenge with meticulous care, each step designed to mirror the betrayal she had inflicted upon me. But now, as I looked into her tear-streaked face, I felt a pang of uncertainty. Had I truly achieved what I set out to do, or had I merely deepened the chasm between us? "I never wanted to hurt you," she repeated, her voice trembling. I was lost, confused. I thought I could find something I was missing. The words hung in the air, a fragile attempt to justify the pain she had caused. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood the gravity of her actions, but instead, I felt a cold numbness settle over me. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "You shattered everything we built together. How can I ever trust you again?" The question felt like a dagger, piercing through the fragile facade we had constructed. I watched as she hesitated, her eyes darting away, and in that moment, I knew the answer. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow, and as I stood there, the weight of my actions pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." But the words felt hollow, a fragile glass ornament shattering under pressure. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the depth of my hurt, but all I saw was her fear, her guilt, and a flicker of something else, defiance. As I stood there, the reality of our situation settled in. I was no longer the vulnerable man recovering from surgery. I was a husband betrayed, a man on the brink of a reckoning. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I had made my point. But at what cost? The darkness that had consumed me began to lift, replaced by a sense of clarity. I realized that revenge had not brought me the closure I sought. Instead, it had left me feeling more hollow than before. I had become someone I didn't recognize, a shadow of the husband I had once been. The desire for retribution had blinded me to the possibility of healing, of forgiveness. "Maybe we need to take a step back," I said, my voice steady but filled with sorrow. "Maybe we need to figure out if we can even salvage this." The words felt heavy on my tongue, but they were necessary. I had to confront the reality of our situation, to acknowledge the pain we had both caused each other. Sarah nodded, her expression a mix of regret and understanding. "I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I messed up, but I want to try to make things right." The sincerity in her eyes stirred something within me, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. "Trust is not something that can be rebuilt overnight," I replied, my heart aching. "It's going to take time, and it's going to hurt. But if we're both willing to put in the effort, maybe we can find a way back to each other." The words felt like a lifeline, a fragile thread connecting us amidst the wreckage of our relationship. As we stood there, the weight of our shared history pressing down on us, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I had been consumed by anger and resentment, but now I understood that healing would require vulnerability and honesty. It would mean facing the pain head-on, acknowledging the hurt we had caused each other, and finding a way to move forward. In the days that followed, we began to navigate the treacherous waters of our relationship. We sought counseling, opened up about our feelings, and confronted the demons that had driven us apart. It was a painful process, filled with tears and difficult conversations, but it was also a journey of rediscovery. We began to peel back the layers of hurt, to understand the root of our issues, and to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. I found myself reflecting on our past, the moments that had defined our relationship. I remembered the laughter, the shared dreams, and the love that had once bound us together. Those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the betrayal that had shattered my world. But as we worked through our pain, I began to see glimpses of the love that had once flourished between us. The road to healing was long and fraught with challenges, but I was determined to reclaim the love we had lost. I wanted to believe that we could emerge from this darkness stronger than before, that we could find a way to trust each other again. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to fight for us. As I lay in bed one night, the weight of the day settling over me, I realized that love was not just about trust, it was also about forgiveness. I had to forgive Sarah for her betrayal, just as I had to forgive myself for the darkness I had embraced in my quest for revenge. It was a difficult lesson, but one that would ultimately lead us toward healing. In the end, I learned that love is a fragile thing, easily shattered but capable of being rebuilt. It requires vulnerability, honesty, and a willingness to confront the pain that lies beneath the surface. As I looked at Sarah, her eyes filled with hope and determination, I knew that we were on the right path. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship, and perhaps, just perhaps, we would find our way back to each other. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to embrace it. I had faced the darkness and emerged with a newfound understanding of love, trust, and the power of forgiveness. And as we took our first steps toward healing, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, a hope that whispered of new beginnings and the possibility of a brighter future.